Hi, I want to welcome you to our journey of discovering God's love for us today, His Father's heart, and out of that responding to it and walking in obedience, being disciples of Jesus. And once again, I've got my good friend Steve Sizemore here with me. It's a joy to connect with Steve and just draw from the well of wisdom that God's poured into him today. And we're going to talk about love. That's a big topic. It always makes me think immediately that 1 John 4:8b, God is love. And what does that mean? What's that look like? So Steve, just jump in here with us today.
Sure. It's great to be with you, Bob. We've been talking about following Jesus as a disciple. And if we look at the commands of Christ, which is very helpful for us, because in Matthew 28, Jesus said, teaching them to obey all that I've commanded you. So you sometimes think, okay, what are the basic commands of Christ? And you've studied that out. And two of the basic commands of Christ, you call them one together, is love God with everything. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Yes. He commands us to do that. And to love your neighbor as yourself. So one of the basic, and when I say basic, I don't mean like, hey, this is easy, or we'll graduate pretty quickly from this one. Not at all. It's to love God with everything and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So when we think about what is love, and we've been talking about responding to God's value. And one definition or description of love, which has helped me through the years, and there are many ways we could describe love, but this has been a helpful description. Love is choosing the highest good or best for God and others. So even when we are loving God, we're making a choice. And our love for God is always a response to His great love. So when we think about loving God, it's never a thing. I've prayed this prayer, and the jury's still out. So I'm going to put this on the table, and some people may hit the pause button on the video and say, I'm done with that video. I don't like that part. But, the prayer, God, help me love you more. I've thought about that prayer. I think that's an interesting prayer. I know I've prayed it at different times, but it's an interesting way to pray. God, help me love you. It's like, okay, what does that mean? But I think the thing that helps me love Him most is if I focus on how much He loves me.
Yes.
Because Scripture teaches us what? That God first loved us.
Right.
Not that we first loved Him. So our love is always a response. So if I'm going to respond to something, then I should look at that. I should focus on that, and that'll stir up a response instead of thinking, I just need to love God more. What's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so powerful, because for me that's been key, even as I learned this definition from you years ago, and that was one of my initial challenges was, well, how do I, make it happen? And like you said, just focusing on His love for us, because going back to your definition, love is a choice, first of all. And I think for me, we can be so confused in the world and many times in the church what really love is, even because we've been taught that it's an emotion, it's a feeling, and ultimately it's a choice. We can have wonderful feelings out of that, but there's days where I don't feel like loving God. And there's freedom in admitting that. There's days I don't feel like loving other people around me. And there's freedom in that, but then I can't stay there. I have to pause and do what you just said. In fact, just today, I was overwhelmed by His love for me because I began to focus on Him. And that's huge.
Yeah. So his question is love an emotion? Well, there's all kinds of emotions connected to the choice to love.
Right.
Some of them times they're really positive.
That's true.
Warm fuzzies or whatever it may be. Other times it's like, this is killing me.
Mm.
I mean, Jesus was loving the world on the cross. And there was no emotional pleasantry to that.
Wow.
He said when he was in the garden, he's saying just the weight of the sin of the world was crushing him. And you can then couple that with the pain and the suffering, physical pain and suffering on the cross. Yeah. But that was the one of the greatest expressions of love ever in the history of the universe. I'm saying it is, as far as I know. I can't think of one that tops it.
Right.
But I don't think it was emotionally pleasant for him. So we have to be careful that, like you say, I don't feel any love right now. It's not basically an emotion. It's like I'm choosing what's best. So then you have to ask, well, how do you determine what's best? And that's a journey. really we look, God himself is our example of showing us what's best. And then his word teaches us, his written word teaches us what's best. And again, looking at the life of Jesus, he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So we look at Jesus to understand what love even looks like.
Yes.
And so that's how we determine what's best. And it's not based on what do I think, it's just what do I think. But God, what's best in your eyes? What's best according to your word? What's best according to the example of Jesus? And then choosing that. And it's identifying what's best, the highest good or best for someone, and then being willing. Some others have said, friends of mine have said, hey, it's being willing to do whatever it takes to make that possible, whatever that is. And so that's huge when you think about it. You think, how in the world am I going to love like that?
Yeah, that is huge. And I think there again, for me, the first step is being anchored in how much he loves me. And then looking at who he is. You know, the saying, what would Jesus do? For me, it's even taking that back a step and say, well, what's Jesus like? Because you quoted the scripture, if we've seen Jesus, we've seen the Father. So what's God like? He created me in his image, so he created me to be like him. So if God is love, then he created me to be loving. And sometimes that helps me realize it doesn't have to be an uphill battle. It's a choice, but it flows from my identity that I was created actually to be loving. And out of that, then I choose to love others and choose to sometimes do the hard work, and sometimes it's easy, but it's a day-to-day walk.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jesus said, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I've loved you. It's like, boy, if you left the last part out, it'd be a lot easier. So just love each other. But he did. He said, as I have loved you. It's like, oh, come on. Oh, my. But there must be a richness to living at that level he wants for us.
Yes.
He's not crushing us, saying, you bunch of failures. Let me just put you back in your place. Compare yourself to me. Now do you feel like an idiot? There you go. That's not his motivation.
No.
He's like, I'm calling you to something that I'm living in, and I want to call you to it. I'm inviting you to it. And it's a process.
He's inviting us into something that's a joy. I think you just touched on that. That's huge, because it's not this weight. It doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, I can never attain that. It's allowing him to live through us, to love in the way that he loves. That's powerful.
You know, if people cry out for justice, which I believe as followers of Jesus, we should be very concerned with justice. Just a quick thought on justice, which hopefully somebody out there can correct me if this isn't accurate. That we'll never see justice that measures to the justice of God until Jesus comes back. We'll see expressions of human justice. And they may be an improvement on last year's justice, but they're never going to be that beautiful expression of justice of Jesus. And so whatever that looks like, I don't have it figured out exactly what all that's going to look like, but I want his justice to come in the earth. And it will come. It's coming. But this is one thing I believe is the justice of God. Because the most powerful thing we do in life, the most powerful activity for humans on this planet is loving God and loving others. Those are the most powerful expressions on the planet for human beings. And the justice part of that, what I mean by that is that he extends that opportunity to every person, no matter their background, their education, their economic status, whatever it may be. He says, whoever, it's an invitation to every person. You can be engaged in the most important activity on this planet, which is loving God and loving others. And to me, that's the justice of God, because at the end, that's what he's going to measure. How have you loved God? How have you loved others? Anyway, I just love that. Because, we may be in an economic system which favors people who are left-handed instead of the right-handed people, whatever. It's like, hey, what's the problem? But when it comes to the most important thing, he says, come on, everybody, you can do this.
That's awesome. So on this journey of loving God and loving others, Steve, we just really begin to just touch on it because it's so vast. But summing up what we said today, is there something that sticks out to you, a practical way to take a step in that direction of loving God and loving others?
Yeah, I would. We may not be in this place. I know I had to come to a shift, in a sense, a very practical shift. Instead of measuring my love for God, instead of kept looking inward, like, how much do I love God? Do I love God more today than I did yesterday? Is just turn that around, take all whatever my measuring devices are, and try to measure the greatness of God's love for me. That sort of flipped things around for me in my journey of discipleship with Jesus.
Yes, and I agree. That's been huge for me as well. And so I encourage you to do that today, and not just today, but in your ongoing walk with Jesus. Just embrace, receive, measure how much he loves you, and that will empower you to love God and love others. Well, hope you to join us again soon. Thanks for being with us today.